to be explaining to you guys what exactly creates responses like you're about to see here in a second out of the Chicago mayor. I'm also going to be discussing exactly what happened over Memorial Day weekend, even though it is Thursday after Memorial Day. And I'm also going to be speaking about what is a sign to come, and also how exactly you get there and why it is that this plan of action that is trying, and I mean they are trying to implement in the city, is just going to end up accelerating the process. So make sure you guys stick around.
At Memorial Day weekend here in the city of Chicago, the deadliest the city has seen in 8 years. From Friday until early today, there were 42 shooting incidents with 53 victims. 12 people were killed, 11 shot to death, and 1 fatal stabbing. The highest concentration of shooting incidents were in the 10th and 11th district on the west side. And Mayor Johnson released a statement about the violence and the efforts by peacekeepers and police officers, saying in part, quote, "As a result of their efforts, thousands of Chicagoans and visitors enjoyed themselves safely at beaches, festivals, and neighborhood events across the city. Tragically, however, too many others were unable to. But I know none of us will rest until every Chicagoan can safely enjoy all the beauty our city has to offer."
Traumatized. Traumatized. Don't worry, we'll get to the actual, let's just say the actual words that he actually spoke, because it always makes, it's always more impactful when you hear the person speak it. But don't worry, we'll get to that here in a second, because I got a nice little collage of what happened this past weekend in Chicago that's going to be rolling for you guys. And of course, with the migrant crisis, it's probably going to get a lot worse. If you are a sane, rational person in the city of Chicago and you don't plan on voting Democrat anymore, I would obviously advise you to leave that area. However, this right here is what we need to talk about. We need to talk about why this is the case, and we also need to talk about how it is that this whole left-wing spectrum just gets worse and worse and worse. Don't worry, but we'll explain that more towards the end of the video. There's also a second video coming out today that kind of further clamps down on this. So let's go ahead and talk about this. So the city of Chicago obviously had over 50 people get shot this past Memorial Day weekend. We already know that Chicago has become a cesspool of violence. We've seen businesses such as Walmart leave the South Chicago area. We're seeing a lot of businesses not wanting to invest. And of course, now you got Brandon Johnson, an actual true believer. Don't worry, we will highlight the true believer thing much more towards the end of the video. But I want to go ahead and roll this for you, and then I want to go ahead and kind of critique why it is that this whole community task force thing, this whole community peacekeepers thing is just going to end up becoming a great big giant mistake, and it's probably going to make matters a lot worse, because you have to know the people that you are dealing with. And obviously when you have someone as naive as Johnson, these are the outcomes you are going to get. This is going to be about 3 minutes long. Make sure you guys watch it all the way through, and we'll come back on the other side.
Yeah, Diane and Val, the shooting victims range in age from 2 years old to 77 years old, representing every part of the city. This despite a collaborative public safety effort the new mayor hopes to implement all summer.
44th Ward. I think there's a lot of anxiety out there. There's a lot of fear that's out there. And, you know, the residents are rightfully a little bit on edge.
The Lakeview shootings included one Thursday night in the 500 block of West Melrose. Saturday, 35-year-old William Hare shot and killed in the 500 block of West Surf. And early Sunday morning, 3 people shot in the 600 block of West Berry. New Mayor Brandon Johnson hoped to deter much of this violence by pumping private money to fund nonprofit groups sponsoring activities. Mothers and Men Against Senseless Killing, or MASK, sponsored one such event. The mayor even stopped by to play cards for a bit.
He empowered so many community organizations with that extra funding to even have their doors open, to even be able to be involved on Memorial Weekend. I've never seen a push like that.
Nevertheless, the overall number of shootings and fatalities, the highest number in nearly a decade for Memorial Day weekend. Nonetheless, many proponents believe the mayor's holistic approach is the right way to eventually reduce crime.
You have to educate your way out of it. You have to engage. You have to understand why people do the things that they do. And you have to address the issues, the root causes of the violence. You have to get to that. And you can't do that on a holiday. You have to do that every day.
In addition to the activities, hundreds of so-called peacekeepers on the streets hoping to intervene and de-escalate potential violence.
Going out, engaging directly with people at risk, occupying hotspots, and doing what they do, which is to try and save lives.
Weekend, by our count, at least 50 people were shot, 10 killed. A man was critically wounded in the back of the Yards neighborhood. In this South Chicago home, another man was shot in the face. Overnight Monday, 3 people ages 57 to 77 were wounded while standing on a sidewalk in Calumet Heights. And in Lakeview, 4 people were shot in 2 separate shootings. One of the victims was 35-year-old William Hare, shot and killed while walking with a friend. Mayor Brandon Johnson spent the weekend at various neighborhood gatherings aimed at keeping streets safe. Last week, he touted a holistic approach to public safety this summer with new funding to support community groups, but says we have a tremendous amount of work to do.
Poverty didn't go away over the weekend. Like, we understand that when communities have been disinvested in and traumatized, that you're seeing the manifestation of that trauma.
Never mind him saying that the communities are traumatized as a result of it. Never mind that at all. That is something that somebody who is extremely naive and very weak would say. Matter of fact, I got to remind people all the time that he only won his mayoral race by 3 points. That means that there's a certain significant portion of the city of Chicago that's ready to go back to good old-fashioned tough-on-crime Democrats. Basically, somebody like what you would have seen in former New York Mayor Ed Koch, someone who is like relatively tough on crime. I think that the city of Chicago has got a lot of people who are ready to go back to that, but obviously Brandon Johnson won by a few points. It makes you wonder how that happened. And then, of course, you get the girl talking about, well, he's doing these good things and he's trying. And then you see this thing about community peacekeepers, yet these community peacekeepers are not armed. They're not allowed to have a gun. They're not allowed to fight back. The only thing they can do is step in and basically say, stop, stop, you can't do that. And, of course, if you do that to the criminal is just going to point his pistol at you and shoot you right in the face and keep on going, especially if you were white in that city. Yeah. That right there is probably what's going to happen. The criminals are not going to respect these community these community peacekeepers. It's not going to happen. It's almost as if to say that they tried to create this. And speaking of New York, and speaking of the 1980s, and speaking of Ed Koch, it makes me think that maybe what they tried to do was create a progressive version of the Guardian Angels. The Guardian Angels, of course, which were headed up by Curtis Slewa in the 1980s. They were very instrumental in self-policing, especially on the subways. But it makes you kind of wonder, at least in the case of the Guardian Angels, they at least had a backbone. They were younger. They were much, much tougher. They could actually, they could actually lay down a strong hand. They could actually check you. They could actually put you in your place. In this case right here, I don't see that happening. Which makes you wonder about this plan that Johnson has, which is to give young people something to do. Young people, quite frankly, have something to do in Chicago. They actually have good things to do. They still have playgrounds there. Of course, this is going to get completely interrupted by the migrant crisis, which Brandon Johnson is going to make a lot worse. You see, in New York, and don't worry, we'll be explaining it more about that slippery slope here in a second. You've got the New York City Mayor Eric Adams is trying to revoke the sanctuary city status. He's trying to do this because he obviously used the sanctuary city status and a little bit more the liberal SJW type messaging to get elected, only to find out that he's not exactly going to govern like one. Whereas Lori Lightfoot, she ran on to get elected, only to find out that she was just straight up weak and clueless and brainless. And then, of course, you get someone like Brandon Johnson, an actual true believer, someone who actually believes in the messaging of the woke, the progressive experiment. This is not going to end very well. Now, me personally, what I would suggest you do is actually refund your police departments, give them a lot more money, put more cops on the street, and try to secure the areas first before you decide to implement this work program. You see, this little work program that Brandon Johnson has, believe it or not, it's actually pretty solid in theory. The problem is he does not have the parameters to protect it. You see, what he's going to be doing is putting these community task force people, who, by the way, are just interventionists who don't have a weapon. And as I said before, the criminal already has no respect for them, especially given all the racial rhetoric against old white men and old white people who actually live in the area. Trust me, there's still some there. You're going to put them in charge with no weapons. You're going to put them in charge with no ability to fight back. You're going to get absolutely steamrolled. The crime is just going to get much, much worse. And then you see the migrant crisis coming in. Yeah, you're about to see the, let's just say, the true racial divisions of America play out in our cities. It's going to be a very, very sad thing to see. However, a lot of people, myself included, could have told you that this era was coming a long time ago. And, of course, we're going to be discussing that now. How did we get to this powder keg? Now, guys, let's go back in time. Barack Obama's former chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, who, by the way, also was in the Bill Clinton White House. He became the mayor of Chicago. I recently mentioned him in a video about Chick-fil-A. I'll link it in the description box because we had to go back in time when Chick-fil-A actually was under the gun of the whole gay marriage thing. Now, what does this have to do with Chicago? Well, it has to do with the fact that they said Chick-fil-A values are not our values. Rahm Emanuel was playing in the much more lefty social justice warrior aspect then, but if you actually look at Rahm Emanuel's career, he's more of a classical moderate Dem type, even though he obviously tried to govern much more to the left. So from there, the liberals, they began to get a little bit more to the left. Of course, conservatives, the Overton window actually changed, and conservatives started to pivot a little bit more towards the center. Hence the real reason why Trump got elected in 2016, if you ask me, and why it is that I think that he'll get elected in 2024 if he's allowed to actually become the nominee. We may do a video on that at a later date. I actually feel like he will, because even if you arrest him, you're not going to be able to lock him up, because, I mean, dude, what are you going to do? You're going to lock up the Secret Service as well? He's afforded that constitutional protection for the rest of his life. Here's the thing, though. Rahm Emanuel, he governs, and of course the town, everything becomes much more liberal. From there, you get someone like, say, Lori Lightfoot. Now, pay very, very close attention to this. We all know that Lori Lightfoot was an extremely weak and incompetent mayor. We already know this. She ran on the social justice warrior messaging. She ran on the whole BLM thing. She ran on the whole thing that Chicago was a sanctuary city, all that stuff there. But yet when she got in charge, she tried to pander to that base with certain, let's just say certain policies. Then eventually, there's this little discussion, which, by the way, I'll link this video in the description box, where her, Eric Adams, Karen Bass, and all the mayors of these very liberal cities, Black Mayors Council, I guess is what you might call it, because everybody got together to talk about the issues. And they were talking about the issue of crime. And immediately, Eric Adams and Lori Lightfoot, who was outgoing, at that point in time, they chose to blame the woke DAs. They chose to blame the woke DAs. Yet they ran on letting the criminal basically run wild. Now, Eric Adams' campaign was not a social justice warrior. He basically presented himself to be almost like what I mentioned earlier, Ed Koch, a tough-on-crime Democrat, somebody who wants to get the crime under control in roughly a term or two, which is pretty much what Rudy Giuliani did. He was able to crack down on crime, initiate stop and frisk, arrest a lot of the criminals as they were about to commit the crime or right before they committed the crime. There's a little bit of morally gray there, but obviously desperate times can sometimes call for desperate measures. You might think that Chicago might try this, but as you guys have basically noticed, you get more and more to the left. You see, they ran on this whole social justice warrior platform, and yet they really and truly weren't woke. They just wanted power, and of course they bungled it, talking about Lori Lightfoot and of course Rahm Emanuel. You get BLM, you get all the wokeness, you get all the rhetoric, you get all the people demanding this, demanding that, and now you're a sanctuary city, you got more and more people overflowing, and then after a while, you get someone like, say, Brandon Johnson, who, by the way, is an actual true believer of the social justice warrior cause. Very naive. If a black man shoots a white guy, or if a black man shoots another black man, he's going to come out here and say that, well, it's because they're traumatized. It's because they're hungry. It's because they're traumatized, because they're hungry. Defund the police. Put more white community organizers. Put Hispanic community organizers in there. Next thing you know, you got black criminals shooting Hispanics. Next thing you know, you got Hispanics shooting blacks. You got to see how I'm saying. The racial divisions, the racial strife between those areas in the city is about to start coming out. And trust me, it's not going to be white conservatives, because the vast majority of white conservatives have left these areas. The white moderates are also going to leave as well. You see, the fact of the matter is that once you go down this slope and once you begin to slip on that slope, next thing you know, everything just goes further and further and further to the left. And then you get the true believer who's really and truly naive about the world that's around him. And then you see what's happening. You think to yourself, my God, this right here is an absolute disaster. This right here is a turkey shoot. This entire thing is going to go to hell very quickly. And I believe it will be. Sadly and unfortunately, I think that the city of Chicago over the next year, 2 years, at least under Brandon Johnson's reign, is not going to have it's not going to have this period of prosperity. If anything, it's going to have an extremely hardcore period of regression. And I have a feeling you're going to be seeing that play out on your television screens here real soon, because you actually elected a true believer, only by 3 points, to take charge of a situation that he obviously cannot handle or will not be able to handle, and in a lot of ways will actually enable. Guys, John Claymore here. If you like this content, please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign off in the comment section. I would love to get you guys' thoughts and see if you think I have actually earned your subscription. Make sure you guys do that. Hit that notifications bell so that way when the video comes out, you guys are notified. That way you guys can go ahead and check it out if you want to. Therefore, it's already available. Please leave a comment in the comment section, and please share these videos with your friends and family. Put it on your Facebook. As a matter of fact, Here's what my Facebook page looks like for the Claymore channel. I post a lot of videos there, and I'm also going to go back and start posting a lot more on the community tabs. I'm also going to be leaving the link to my second channel, Short Timer Prepping, and this project right here, of course, on Dakota Meyer Part 1. This right here will be in the description box as well. I advise you guys go check it out. It is relatively lengthy. It is not a scathing review or anything, but just trying to tell you exactly what it is I believe the actual problem there is with him. Once again, guys, make sure you guys hit that like button, especially for the algorithm. If you think I've earned your subscription, please hit the subscribe button and hit the notifications bell so that way you guys are notified when the videos come out. Share the video, leave a comment in the comment section. I'll see you guys later.